Bobby was an ordinary man who lived in an old wooden house at the end of the street. The house was quiet and lonely, but Bobby loved it. He had lived there since his childhood, and every corner of the house held his memories. His favorite spot was the big wooden chair in the living room. Every evening, he would sit there, drink tea, and watch the world outside the window. One cold night, Bobby felt very weak. He was alone in the house, and the silence around him felt heavier than usual. The wind blew outside, shaking the old windows. Bobby held his chest and tried to breathe, but his body gave up. Slowly, his eyes closed, and he never woke again. His teacup slipped from his hand and fell to the floor, spilling across the rug. When his family found him the next morning, he was still sitting in his chair, his face calm but lifeless. The family cried and prayed for his soul. They buried him in the nearby graveyard, believing that Bobby would finally rest in peace. Everyone thought the house would be empty and silent without him. But the house was not silent. From the very first night after his death, something strange began. The wind carried whispers that sounded like Bobby's voice. The wooden floor creaked as if footsteps were moving through the hall. The rocking chair swayed gently, though no one touched it. The family tried to ignore it, telling themselves it was just their imagination, a trick of grief and sadness. But deep inside, a fear grew. It was as if Bobby had never truly left the house. His presence still lingered, silent but strong, waiting for the right moment to be noticed. After Bobby's death, the house felt different. At first, the family thought it was just sadness making everything seem darker and quieter. But as the nights passed, something strange began to disturb the silence. It started with faint sounds in the hallway. Bobby's wife, Clara, often stayed awake late, unable to sleep without him. One night, as she sat on the bed, she heard the wooden floor creak outside her door. It sounded like slow, heavy footsteps. She froze, thinking maybe one of her children was awake, but when she checked, everyone was asleep. The hallway was empty, and the air felt cold, as if someone invisible had just walked by. The next night, the same thing happened. This time, the sound was clearer, step by step, moving across the hall and stopping near Bobby's old chair in the living room. Clara's heart raced. She wanted to believe it was her imagination, but the sound was too real. Soon, the children began to hear it too. Late at night, when the wind outside was quiet, footsteps echoed inside the house. Sometimes they came from the kitchen, sometimes from the stairs, and sometimes from Bobby's own room. One of the children whispered to Clara, "Mom, I think Dad is still walking around." Clara tried to stay strong, but deep down, she felt the same. The sounds always came from the places Bobby used to go, the hallway, the kitchen, and, of course, the rocking chair. The family started avoiding the living room at night. No one wanted to hear those footsteps anymore. But even when they closed their doors and covered their ears, the sound of the floor creaking never stopped. It was as if Bobby's spirit was not resting, but moving through the house, reminding them that he had never truly left. The living room had always been Bobby's favorite place. His wooden rocking chair stood by the window, facing the street. Every evening, he would sit there for hours, sipping tea and watching people pass by. After his death, the chair stayed empty, a quiet reminder of the man they lost. But one night, Clara heard a sound that made her blood run cold. She was sitting in her bedroom when she heard a slow, steady creaking noise. At first, she thought it was the old house shifting with the wind, but then she realized the sound was familiar. It was the sound of the rocking chair moving. Her hands trembled as she walked into the living room. The room was dark except for the pale light of the moon shining through the window. The chair was moving gently back and forth, creaking with every motion. No one was sitting in it. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. The air around the chair felt cold, colder than the rest of the room. She whispered Bobby's name without meaning to, and the chair suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. The next day, she tried to convince herself it was nothing, maybe just the wind. But the following night, the chair rocked again. And this time, the children saw it too. They stood in the doorway, wide-eyed, clutching each other's hands, whispering, "Dad's chair is moving." Night after night, the chair rocked on its own. Sometimes gently, sometimes violently, as if someone angry was sitting there. The family began to fear the living room. Nobody dared to sit in the chair. It no longer felt like a piece of furniture. It felt alive. The rocking chair became a symbol of something they did not want to believe, that Bobby's soul had not left the house and his presence was strongest where he used to sit. As days passed, the family noticed another strange sign in the house. It was not just the footsteps or the rocking chair anymore. The lights had started to act strangely. It began one evening when Clara entered the living room to turn off the lamp. As her hand touched the switch, the bulb flickered violently, filling the room with sharp flashes of light. Clara stepped back, frightened, but when she turned the switch again, the light went out normally. She thought the wiring was weak, but deep down, fear began to creep into her heart. The next night, while the children were doing homework, the dining room light flickered on its own. The bulbs buzzed and glowed weakly, then grew brighter, then dim again, as if an unseen hand was playing with the current. Suddenly, one of the children whispered, "Dad." At that exact moment, the lights went completely out. Clara lit a candle with trembling hands, and before the flame could steady, the lights came back on by themselves. The candle flickered in her hand, and she felt a cold wave pass through the room. Soon, a terrifying pattern became clear. The lights flickered every time Bobby's name was spoken aloud. Clara tested it once, whispering his name very softly, "Bobby." Instantly, the lamp above her head began to shake and flash. Her heart pounded, and she quickly stopped. The family began to avoid saying his name, but accidents happened. Whenever someone slipped and mentioned Bobby, the whole house would react, the bulbs would buzz, the lamps would blink, and shadows seemed to move across the walls. What scared them most was not just the flickering, but the feeling that Bobby was responding. It was as if he was listening from somewhere close, waiting for them to call his name. The house was no longer just haunted by silence and footsteps. It was alive with Bobby's restless spirit, answering in the only way he could. One cold night, Clara lay awake in her bed. The children were asleep, and the house was quiet, but she could not close her eyes. Her heart was heavy with fear, and every shadow in the room seemed alive. She pulled the blanket close and told herself it was just her imagination. Then she heard it. A soft, faint sound, like a breath. At first, she thought it was the wind outside the window. But no, it came from inside the room. Her heart froze. She listened carefully, and the whisper grew clearer. "Clara." Her eyes widened in shock. It was Bobby's voice. The same gentle tone he used to call her when he was alive. Clara's lips trembled as she whispered back, "Bobby." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the whisper returned, closer this time, as if right behind her ear. "I never left." Clara gasped and turned quickly, but no one was there. The room was empty, the door was closed, and the window was locked. Her candle flickered wildly as if disturbed by an unseen breath. She sat frozen, her hands shaking. The air around her felt icy cold, colder than the winter night outside. Every hair on her body stood on end. She could feel it, someone was there, watching her. The next morning, Clara tried to stay calm for the children. She told herself she had been dreaming, but deep inside, she knew it was real. Bobby's voice was not in her mind. It had come from the house itself. That night, she did not sleep at all. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the wind, sounded like a whisper waiting to call her name again. The family now understood something they wished they could deny. Bobby's soul was not at peace. He was still here, and he wanted them to know. After the whispers, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like something alive, breathing and watching. The family could not escape the sense that Bobby was everywhere. At night, shadows moved across the walls though no one was walking. Sometimes, Clara saw a tall figure standing at the end of the hallway, only for it to vanish the moment she blinked. The children complained that toys fell from shelves by themselves, doors creaked open without a touch, and the sound of breathing filled their rooms when they tried to sleep. One evening, Clara was in the kitchen washing dishes when she felt it. The air around her grew heavy, and her skin turned cold. She didn't hear anything, but she felt eyes on her back. Slowly, she turned and saw the rocking chair moving by itself in the living room. The chair rocked steadily, and for a split second, she saw a faint shape sitting there. A man's figure. Bobby's figure. She dropped a plate, and it shattered on the floor. The chair stopped moving instantly, and the figure was gone. But Clara knew what she had seen. Bobby was not only whispering now, he was showing himself. The children also began to feel it. One of them cried in the night, saying someone had touched his shoulder while he was sleeping. Another said she heard breathing beside her bed. Clara tried to calm them, but inside, she was just as terrified. The presence was no longer just strange sounds and flickering lights. It was real, heavy, and undeniable. Bobby was not gone. His soul was inside the house, walking with them, watching them, and sometimes even touching them. And worst of all, it felt stronger every single night. The family could no longer deny it. Bobby's soul had not left the house. Every night, the presence grew stronger, and the haunting became more terrifying. One evening, Clara gathered her children in the living room. The lights flickered above them, and the rocking chair swayed gently by itself. Clara's voice shook as she whispered, "He is still here. Bobby never left us." The children huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house. A door slammed shut on its own, and the walls groaned as if the whole building was alive. The family screamed, but then came the voice low, cold, and clear. "This is my house." It was Bobby. His whisper filled every corner of the room. The air grew icy, and the shadows stretched unnaturally long, crawling across the walls. Clara's heart pounded. She could almost see him now, standing by the rocking chair, his figure dark and pale, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Tears filled her eyes. "Bobby," she said softly, "why can't you rest?" But the spirit gave no answer. Instead, the chair rocked violently, and the lights burst, leaving the room in complete darkness. The children cried, clinging to their mother. Clara realized the truth. The grave had not silenced Bobby. His memories, his love for the house, and perhaps his unfinished fears had chained his soul inside these walls. He was not at peace. He was trapped, forever bound to the place he once called home. From that night on, the family lived in constant fear. They knew Bobby was with them, watching every step, listening to every word, answering when his name was called. And in the silence of the night, the same words always returned in a whisper. "I never left." Bobby's story reminds us, some souls never rest. They remain in the places they loved or feared the most. If this tale chilled your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more haunting stories in English. Your support keeps the darkness alive, and the stories never ending.